Francis now on the latest on the SAA strike.
Thanks, Griselda. Back to the top story tonight. The strike at SAA over. Today, SAA reached a wage agreement with the two striking unions, the National Union of Metalworkers of South Africa, Numsa, and the SA Cabin Crew Association. So flights expected to return to normal tomorrow. The parties agreed to a wage increase of 5.9%. That applies retrospectively to the 1st of April this year, although the first payments will be made early next year, subject to the availability of funding. Well, to discuss, we're now joined by Phakamile Hlubi-Majola, who is the National Spokesperson for Numsa and Zazi Nsibanyoni-Mugambi, President of the SA Cabin Crew Association. Thank you both for being with us tonight. We appreciate it. Zazi, does this mean everyone back to work, at least by tomorrow?
Yes, I mean, people need time just to cool off and get ready for work. But by tomorrow, after 12 o'clock, everyone should be back to work.
Okay, why midday? Why not?
Because essentially we signed around midday today, and we had to then go back and brief them and give them feedback around the signatures. So in essence, 24 hours ends tomorrow, 12 o'clock. Yeah.
Phakamile, some are flummoxed because SAA was offering 5.9%. So then we have a week-long strike, and you've agreed to 5.9%. What has been achieved beyond that?
Well, for us, for us, the strike was much more than about wages. If that were the case, we wouldn't even have gone on strike if it was simply about securing 5.9%. But just to correct you there, for us, we've actually secured 8%. We've said 5.9%, yes, because that was what was on the table. But our members asked for 8%, and we have said that the difference, the 2.1%, as workers, we will be the ones to find that and fund that through the establishment of a task team. Now, that for us was actually central and key to why this strike was necessary.
So can I just clarify, this is a task team that will look into cost-cutting measures.
Precisely.
And then workers get some of those returns back.
Well, for us, it's not just about cost cutting. I mean, we are dealing with an entity that is on the verge of collapse because of rampant looting and corruption. And there are specific measures that need to be taken in order to save the airline. We as unions have said this many, many times from 2015 to now about the steps that this management and board have to take in order to turn the airline around. And what we've secured through the establishment of the task team is precisely that. This task team will be analyzing all of SAA's contracts with the view to insource, which is one of the demands, I might add, that our members have. And where insourcing cannot happen, then it will either renegotiate or cancel contracts which are a burden to the balance sheet of the airline in order to make it more sustainable.
Some will say this could be a face-saving measure, because how can an airline in the state of SAA not be cost-cutting already where it can? How is it possible to find that extra 2.1%? Is this a reality?
Of course, we've done this as Numsa already at South African Airways Technical. We have managed through this process that we're describing to you by working with the HODs there to go through all their contracts, where we've already identified a contract with KWE which was cancelled, where insourcing took place. That saved them 22 million. But so far in the 2 days that we've had discussions with them in terms of the contracts we've identified, we've already saved them 82 million. So we know that this can be done. The problem that we've had consistently is that we've had a board that refuses to intervene on the procurement spend, which is where the problem actually lies, because they themselves are beneficiaries of looting and corruption. And the deal that we've secured is a vehicle.
Proof of that?
Oh yes, 9 forensic reports to that effect. Zazi can certainly tell you more in terms of the work that SACA has done to expose this.
I just want to stay on because a lot of people will stick on the 5.9%. I mean, that's not even being paid. It's only going to come next year. The union that didn't go on strike, Zazi, they got paid for the week. They didn't lose out on pay. They seem to be better off. For your members, was it still worth it?
Well, the agreement was signed. We must make very clear it's for our members alone. And I get the narrative that it's a 5.9, but you must bear in mind that we had to find ways to make sure that workers get the 8% in the end. I mean, we spoke to the minister, and the minister said, listen, find ways to create this so that you can get back to work. And we got down to work, literally, to find ways in order to say, we'll get you the 8%, we'll deal with corruption, which is the most important thing, and we'll deal with retrenchments. And we've done all three. We're not saving face. Our members are they're ecstatic because we have had to be innovative. And we've managed to do so with various things like the training layer scheme. We've done the education thing, which was creativity, but it puts money back into the pockets of workers. So it's easy to say because public sentiment generally is SAA, get done with it. Yeah. But our main focus is to save 11,000 jobs, and our main focus is to stop corruption. And we believe we have a clear plan to do that through this task team.
Okay, and look, it sounds good because at least it's a win-win. A lot of people have been arguing for this, where you give workers a stake in the business and everybody benefits, rather than this kind of lose-lose labor relations which we seem to have in South Africa. But I'm asking you guys for honesty about what happened behind doors here. At one stage, Phakamile, SAA apparently offering 6.5%, and then that was off the table. What was going on behind the scenes?
It was a very difficult negotiation process. For us to arrive at where we are, we have, as Zazi said, had to be very creative. And yes, indeed, at some point SAA offered 6.5% only to withdraw it at the 11th hour. Why? Well, for us, it was just another example of bad faith on their part, and we exposed them for that. But also, I think we are operating against the backdrop of an airline where we are told that it doesn't have any money. And I say we are told because we have not seen financials for 2 years. And so on the basis of that, and bearing in mind that funding was not available, in fact funding was not even available for salaries up until this morning, salaries for November and December, the agreement that we reached was, in our view, one that could guarantee that workers get the increase which they deserve and they have worked hard for. But at the same time, we can't run away from the fact that this airline is struggling economically, that it needs to turn itself around and become profitably viable. Now, as unions, we have tried for many, many years to engage the executive management on the board on clear strategies to help this airline rectify itself. But we've been ignored. And having exhausted all options, including going to court numerous times, opening criminal cases in the case of SACA, opening a public protector's investigation, we then had to resort to this national strike action, not just to save jobs, because you remember, Francis, that on the 11th of November, they served us with retrenchment notices. And this was the thing that actually provoked the strike.
And I want to get to that. So I'm just starting with the wage deal. Did you feel huge pressure? Because, yes, then we heard that there was no money for salaries. Some people were saying maybe Numsa would be the union to bring down the airline. Maybe SAA would fold because of your two unions. Did you feel pressure?
No, I mean, this only happened today. And bear in mind, this issue about the money coming in only, and the salaries actually was communicated today. But bear in mind that we were in negotiations until 1 o'clock this morning, where we were literally done with the framework of what we were going to present to workers. So, I mean, look, the whole strike is pressure to get members back to work and achieve what we wanted to achieve, and we believe that we have in ours.
Are the workers happy with this deal?
Definitely.
We can guarantee you. I think they realize, I mean, everyone knows the financial situation of SAA. And I think they appreciate the ingenuity that we pulled off to try and get them an 8% in the ways that we did. And so they're
But that 8% is contingent on cost cutting. Let's just be clear.
But you have to also see this from our perspective, Francis. We've been severely criticized in the media for having simply embarked on strike action to demand wages. This strike, we have demonstrated for a fact, was never just about that. The measures that we've put in place are exactly what we have been calling for in terms of changes, radical changes that have to take place in the way that SAA has been running itself. It is a fact that its biggest cost driver has never been the wage bill. It's been the corrupt procurement spend, that where there has been absolutely no consequence management, where there has been absolutely no intervention. And in spite of efforts by us...
Even now with the restructuring officer, with the whole of South Africa watching what's happening at SAA, are you saying it's still going on?
Which restructuring officer? We had Peter Davies that came to SAA for a good year, did absolutely nothing. From the UK, came, did nothing, left, and now is advising the board from the UK at millions,
at 20 million per month.
At 20 million a month.
And another confusion, because you're talking about insourcing, so that's what unions want, I understand. The prevailing wisdom is that insourcing is always more expensive than outsourcing, because you kind of protect permanent jobs through insourcing. So is there not a tension now where you're going to try and cost cut but avoid outsourcing at all costs?
Not necessarily at all. We've done that already at South African Airways with a contract with KWE. That was a contract which was outsourced for the purposes of warehousing. As Numsa, we identified that our members could do this work, and in fact workers were then insourced to do that work at a cost saving of 22 million for the airline. There are many, many examples, if we are given the opportunity to work with management, to go through these contracts, where we have actually said, as part of this task team, is it's got 3 goals. The one is to insource where insourcing is possible. Where insourcing is not possible, then to either renegotiate the contract or to cancel it if the contract is a burden to the airline. Because at the end of the day, these are the things that are actually crippling SAA, not workers.
Zazi, Furiel Haffajee wrote a piece today, maybe saying that the bird has flown out the nest already. There's so few SAA passengers left, so we can talk about insourcing, outsourcing, but is there a future for the airline?
No, I think that's untrue. I mean, the cabin crew on board will tell you that people still love the SAA brand. South Africans are very negative towards SAA, and I think there needs to be a move to turn that perception around, because...
Well, one of the reasons is because it's not competitive and it costs more.
And hence we did what we did, because we're sick and tired of saying the same thing without any action. So this is basically a last straw attempt for us. Hence, our workers stayed out there for 8 days. They didn't take it lightly. It was for people to actually realize, stop saying unions are striking, unions actually deal. Someone needs to actually get to work about the corruption. It can't be ignored anymore. Hence the 8-day strike. But
are you not worried that passengers who are already off SAA, not interested, now have yet another reason not to fly SAA because of the strike?
South African passengers are off. But I can tell you, internationally, if you speak to cabin crew, international passengers, the flights are full. People love flying SAA. So, yes, we have to work on the South African sentiment about SAA. But internationally, South African Airways is a brand, a loved brand. So there is still business, there's still room, and hence we want an urgent intervention. We're going to start this task team within the next 8 days. So we're not playing around, and I think we are taking our future into our own hands as workers.
There's another big issue here. Numsa raising safety concerns about SAA aircraft. Do you regret that? Because again, that's going to be in the minds of passengers.
No, we don't regret that, and we don't withdraw that, because we had good reason to raise those concerns, because we were well aware of the fact that the majority of workers were on strike. We, in terms of public interest, were raising these questions at that time. So for us, really, the focus now for us is, as Zazi said, we've got a lot of work to do with this task team. We have to do the work of recovering as much money as is possible in order to assist this airline to turn itself around. This is what we have to do as workers, because the board has failed us, the executive management has failed us, and to be frank, to a large extent we can say the shareholder has also failed us, because the fact that we were actually forced to resorting to a national strike is a shame on this government. It's actually shocking that the board has not been fired even at this point. You've got an acting chairperson of the board in the form of Thandeka Mgoduso, who, as we speak, has a cloud of corruption allegations hanging over her head in relation to a tender which was negotiated with 21st Century. No action has been taken. You've got the former...
So what does the minister say to you when you go with these claims of corruption? Are they not doing anything?
I mean, the minister's saying SAA does not have money, and we get that. I mean, we get that.
But on the claims of corruption?
No, I mean, hence the task team. He said, listen, create this task team. Let us, the DPE and Treasury, have an oversight on this particular task team so we can implement what you are saying. So he's saying...
But the task team is on cost cutting. What about the evidence you say you have about corruption?
But the contracts will actually expose the corruption.
All right.
So the task team has got many roles. It's not just the cost cutting comes from dealing with corruption. That's actually at the heart of SAA's crisis, and this is why our members resorted to this action, because they were faced with job losses in order to protect those who were continuing to loot and to steal from the airline.
Okay, so let's talk about those job losses. They haven't been taken off the table completely. They've been deferred, the labour relations action, basically, that SAA announced. What's going to happen early next year? Is there going to be another strike?
Well, the way we see it, we have actually, within the wage agreement, negotiated something that we feel can mitigate against any Section 189 application which is made against us. One of the things that we negotiated in the agreement was for the training layoff. What it is, it's for companies like South African Airways who are in economic distress. It gives them the opportunity, especially for those number of workers that they say are a burden on their finances. Instead of them working full-time, these people take up training with institutions which are recognized, and the company, SAA, only has to contribute 25% of their salary and their benefits. So the way we see it, the combination of the task team, where monies are going to be located through reviewing contracts, plus the fact that they now have the additional support of this training layoff, which takes the burden of paying salaries off their shoulders, that there, in our view, should not be any need for any retrenchments.
Okay, so you will accept some people moving over to that training program?
Well, absolutely, because it is a surefire way for us to prevent workers from losing their jobs. SAA, in our view, would have no reason to retrench workers when already the salaries have been taken care of in the form of this 4 to 6 month program. Okay. If in that 6 month period, and we've said this, if in that 6 month period the training layoff still does not produce the desired results, nothing stops them from serving Section 189. But they have to give this plan a chance. And this is the thing why members were so upset, because they were suddenly faced with retrenchments, and yet nothing had been done to intervene in the areas which were responsible for the crisis that SAA found itself in.
So at the end of the plan, Zazi, my question is, will the unions accept some job losses if they are justifiable? And I do think there's kind of a hardening where everyone's saying, well, unions at least are saying, no, not one job will be lost. On the other side, taxpayers are feeling this fatigue, continuous bailouts. We hear that SAA is uncompetitive, partly because of the labour costs, and there's a reluctance to keep that going as well.
Look, we are not unreasonable, but you must bear in mind that the management structure of South African Airways is very bloated. Hence, our agreement says it excludes us, but we'll deal with the management
So some
structure.
managers may be losing
some managers,
their jobs.
yes, and I think that's where the majority of the problems lie, and the salaries lie. But in terms of us, we don't think we're a real problem in terms of this. And this training layoff is going to solve most of South African Airways' problems with regard to, the labour and attrition at South African Airways is pretty high. We should be able to overcome this in the next 12 months, the issue of losing crew members or ground staff.
And I think also in the socio-economic context of South Africa, it's truly shocking that you even have government ministers like the likes of Tito Mboweni speaking so recklessly about the airline, speaking about it being discarded like you're selling a spaza shop. You cannot afford for an SOE like SAA in this time to collapse when the economy is not growing. We've got 38.5% unemployment, and there's no jobs. It's really shocking that we don't have ministers lining up actually to try and help us to save this airline. We should all
for
be
the
asking
jobs,
for
because
the jobs.
The airlines will still continue to fly to all these routes.
But at least for the jobs, because what alternative are you creating otherwise?
My final question is, to me a concern has been the relationship between you as unions and SAA. SAA initially saying you didn't come to meetings, you said they were not meeting you at the table, they were being arrogant, etc. That relationship, if it was better, could this have been avoided?
Oh, definitely.
Yes.
Definitely.
And we indicated it today. We actually said
so
to
the whole
them
strike could have been avoided if there was a better relationship.
And it's all about
And do you
talking.
take any blame for that bad relationship, or is it all SAA?
We have done everything possible, Francis. We have gone to court on numerous times, High Court. We have picketed, we have striked, we have marched, we have met all ministers. There isn't anybody who doesn't know about the problems of SAA. We were forced into taking this step because no one was listening. And I think you know this as somebody who hosts this show regularly, about how communities are frequently ignored when there are glaring problems that are facing them and they need to be dealt with. And yet those who have been tasked with fixing those problems just choose to look the other way, continue to steal, continue to loot to the detriment of those communities. Our members made it very clear that they were unwilling to accept another round of retrenchments for the failures, for the mismanagement and for the corruption of South African Airways.
All right, we're basically running out of time, but quick comment, because we're going to run a story on Ethiopian Airline, which is doing wonderfully well, which is this glowing model saying it wants to help SAA. Would unions welcome that, Zazi?
Well, we need to understand what the plan is, and this is the problem with the shareholder and management. They need to take us into their confidence so we can understand, because if we don't understand what your strategic equity partner is, we don't know what to make of it. So come sit down, talk, let's understand, but we must make it very clear. Privatization for us is not an option right now because we don't understand what that is. No one has actually spoken to us. So we need to sit down with management. We need to work on this task team and find solutions to build SAA. I mean, Ethiopian Airways just overtook us right now. So we can get back to where we need to get to soon, yeah.
Desperately needed.
Yeah.
Yes, given where the airline is. All right, thank you both for coming in and having that in-depth discussion. Phakamile Hlubi-Majola, who's the National Spokesperson for Numsa and Zazi Nsibanyoni-Mugambi, President of the SA Cabin Crew Association. We take a short break. We'll be back with lots more on The Full View. Stay with us.